Welcome to Reformed Thinking. You know, when we look into a standard mirror, there is a very specific expectation of, well, objective reflection.
Right. I mean, it is just simple physics.
Yeah, you raise your right hand and the reflection raises its left hand.
Right.
It's a one-to-one correlation.
For sure. A mirror does not care about your feelings or your background or your theological pedigree at all.
Right. If you have a smudge of dirt on your cheek, the mirror just shows it. There is no bias. It reflects light without any editorializing.
It gives you the raw, unfiltered data of your own appearance.
But imagine stepping in front of a mirror that does not show your reflection at all.
Oh, wow.
Instead, it shows the person standing behind you.
That'd be pretty unnerving.
Right. And not only does it show them, it magnifies all of their flaws, their blemishes, every tiny mistake they make, while completely blurring out your own face.
Wow. So you're just staring at someone else's issues.
Yes. You stand there critiquing the person in the background, completely oblivious to the dirt on your own nose. That selective blindness is the core issue we are looking at today.
It is a massive blind spot.
It really is. So, we're taking a thorough look at a specific text that strips away that illusion. We are analyzing a comprehensive commentary on Romans chapter 2.
Right. Specifically focusing on the observations of the historical theologian Matthew Henry.
Exactly. And just for some context, in the first chapter of this particular letter, the text outlined the guilt of the broader, secular Gentile world.
Yeah, it laid it all out.
But here, the focus shifts to a very uncomfortable target.
It does. It shifts to the religious insider.
Right.
To set the stage properly, the transition from chapter 1 to chapter 2 is a brilliant rhetorical pivot.
Right.
I mean, the author of the letter had just spent an entire section detailing the moral failures of the outside world, the secular culture of the time.
Which, is an easy target.
Oh, totally. You can imagine the religious insiders, the Jewish people of that day who possessed the written law, just nodding along, agreeing with the condemnation.
Like, yeah, get them. Tell them how bad they are.
Yes, precisely. They felt vindicated. They probably felt a huge sense of superiority. But then, chapter 2 flips the script entirely.
It is a total bait and switch, but a holy one.
Right. The goal here is to prove that religious privileges shield no one from divine justice. Everyone, regardless of their background or their vocabulary, stands on identical footing before God.
So to the listener, have you ever harshly judged someone else's actions only to realize later that you do the precise same thing?
We all have, right?
Oh, absolutely. That is the psychological mechanism we need to understand today. The commentary calls this the illusion of the bribed judge.
That is such a heavy phrase, the bribed judge.
It really is. The text arraigns these religious insiders for censoriousness and self-conceit. They assumed they had this inherent right to condemn others, specifically the outside Gentile world, while committing similar moral failures themselves.
Yeah, and the commentary points out that they looked with massive scorn upon the poor Gentiles. They viewed them as not even worthy to be set with the dogs of their flock.
The dogs of their flock. Man.
Yeah, that phrase carries immense weight. It highlights an extreme level of contempt.
It is so degrading.
It is. What we are seeing is the psychological anatomy of projection. The insider believes that by loudly protesting against the sins of the outsiders, they can somehow atone for their own guilt.
Wait, let us examine that mechanism for a second.
Sure.
How does the human brain conflate condemning a sin with being immune to it? It is such a twisted logic.
It is incredibly twisted, but it happens because the insider assumes their proximity to the truth changes their legal standing.
Ah, right. Proximity equals immunity in their minds.
Yes. They think their ability to identify a failure in someone else makes them inherently righteous. There's a massive form of cognitive dissonance.
They are essentially trying to grade on a curve, but they are the ones making the curve.
That is a great way to put it. They assume God will proceed with a partial hand, favoring them simply because they hold the right credentials.
But the commentary makes it clear that God's judgment is according to truth, not outward appearance, right?
Right. The heart-searching God cannot be imposed upon by formal pretenses. These individuals were blind to their own sacrilege because they were so hyper-focused on the overt idolatry of the outsiders.
Okay, think of a corrupt prosecuting attorney.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Right, so this attorney aggressively locks up criminals for fraud. They are standing in front of juries, giving these impassioned, fiery speeches about justice, the rule of law, and the necessity of punishing thieves.
Real dramatic courtroom stuff.
Exactly. Meanwhile, they are embezzling money from the city on the side.
Wow.
They assume their job title, their proximity to the law, and their loud condemnation of other fraudsters grants them immunity from the very laws they claim to uphold.
They think the badge protects them.
Right. They think the system will not touch them because they are part of the system.
Well, I would actually push back on that analogy just a little bit.
Okay, how so?
The problem with that analogy is that the prosecuting attorney usually knows they are breaking the law and is actively trying to hide it from the authorities.
True, they are shredding documents in the back room.
Right. But the religious insider, according to this commentary, often reaches a point of genuine self-deception.
Oh, wow. So they don't even know they are embezzling, so to speak.
Kind of. They do not just hide their failure, they actually believe they are exempt from the consequences. They feel insulated by their heritage and their possession of the written law.
That is terrifying.
It is. They think they can bribe divine justice with their loud protests against others. The text addresses the sinner's conscience directly, asking, "Thinkest thou this, O man?"
It is a direct appeal to rationality.
Yes. Can a rational, dependent creature really think they can outwit the righteous judge of all?
But if this delusion is entirely internal, how do they reach this level of self-conceit?
What do you mean?
Well, it does not just appear out of nowhere, right? That there has to be a catalyst, some sort of starting point.
Ah, yes. The commentary suggests a causal link, pointing out that individuals completely misunderstand how God's patience operates.
Right. They confuse delayed consequences with divine approval.
Yes, and that leads directly into the concept of misinterpreting divine patience.
Which is such a dangerous thing to do.
The commentary breaks down a charge against the insiders consisting of two branches. The first branch is slighting the goodness of God.
Slighting his goodness.
Okay, the insiders had singular tokens of divine favor. I mean, they had the covenants, the giving of the law, the promises. But they treated these mercies lightly.
Like taking it all for granted.
Exactly. The commentary notes that low and mean thoughts of divine goodness sit at the bottom of a great deal of human rebellion.
There's a specific phrase the author uses that stopped me in my tracks when I read it.
Which one?
He talks about an interpretive contempt.
Oh, yes. That is a brilliant phrase.
He says that in every willful sin, there is an interpretative contempt of the goodness of God.
It is profound. Well, it is incredibly insightful.
Right. It is like you are looking at God's forbearance, his long-suffering, and you are interpreting that patience as an invitation to be bolder in your rebellion.
Yes. They do not realize that God's forbearance is designed to lead them to repentance. The commentary makes a critical distinction regarding the methods God uses.
Let's unpack that distinction.
So, God takes a specific method to bring sinners to repentance. He leads them like rational creatures. He does not drive them like beasts.
Meaning, he doesn't just put a bit in their mouth and yank.
Right. He uses bands of love. It is a lure, an appeal to the mind and the heart. Driving a beast implies using force, a whip, or immediate physical trauma to correct behavior.
But leading a human is different.
God uses the slack and the rope to see what the individual will do with their freedom.
But instead of following that lead, the insider uses the slack and the rope to run further away. Like, if I touch a hot stove, I get burned immediately. The physical consequence is instant, so I learn not to touch it again.
Cause and effect. Immediate.
But if I engage in a moral failure and lightning does not strike, my brain assumes the sky is empty, or at least that the sky does not care.
And that introduces the second branch of the charge, provoking the wrath of God.
Because the lightning is still coming eventually.
Right. By ignoring this leading, they cultivate a hard and impenitent heart. What is chilling is the observation that this hardness is contracted by long custom.
Long custom, you mean habit.
Yes, it is human habit. The more you ignore the light, the more accustomed to the dark your eyes become. It is a gradual desensitizing process. The conscience becomes seared over time.
Wait, hold on. I need to challenge the specific metaphor the text uses next.
Okay, lay it on me.
It talks about sinners treasuring up wrath.
Ah, yes. Romans 2.5.
That phrasing is incredibly jarring to me. Usually, a treasure is a positive asset. It is gold, it is silver, it is a retirement fund you want to accumulate.
That's something valuable.
Why would anyone use a financial savings metaphor for divine anger? Why hoard your own destruction? It feels completely counterintuitive.
It is a deliberate and shocking use of economic language to highlight the absurdity of their actions. Think about the mechanics of a treasury.
Okay, a bank vault.
A treasury implies abundance, but it also implies secrecy and delayed access.
So it is about the slow, unseen but compounding daily accumulation of a terrible debt.
Precisely.
When you put money in a savings account, you do not see it growing every single second. You do not feel the account getting heavier in your pocket.
Right, you just get a statement at the end of the month.
But the interest is compounding in secret. Every day you leave it there, the balance increases based on an agreed-upon metric.
Yes.
Using the word treasure suggests that the sinner is actively, daily, continuously adding to their own ruin, treating their rebellion as if it were something valuable to hoard away in a vault.
A vault that will eventually be opened. The commentary explains that the treasury of wrath is hidden, sealed up like magazines of hail reserved against a day of battle. Every willful sin adds to the score. It inflames the reckoning.
So the sinner thinks they're getting away with something because the vault is closed right now.
Yeah, they do not see the immediate deduction from their spiritual bank account, so they assume no transaction occurred.
But they're just making the eventual withdrawal that much more catastrophic.
The text mentions that this treasure will be broken open like the fountains of the great deep. It is a reservation for a future occasion.
Which means the present day is just a day of patience.
Yes, the present day is a day of patience, but there is a day of wrath coming where it will be dispensed wholesale.
And the author makes a point to differentiate human anger from divine wrath, right?
Oh, very much so. The author insists that the wrath of God is not like human wrath. It is not a heated passion, an erratic fury, or loss of emotional control.
It's not God flying off the handle.
No, it is a righteous judgment. It is a settled will to punish sin, because sin is inherently contrary to his nature.
Right.
These seeming disorders we see today, where the wicked prosper, where the corrupt attorney gets away with it, where the hypocrite receives public accolades, they are temporary. They will eventually be set right.
Which demands we look at the exact standards God will use when that vault is finally opened.
We have to know the metrics.
Right. If wrath is being accumulated in secret, and if current appearances are deceiving, how is the final ledger actually balanced?
The text transitions into the metrics of divine equity, explaining that God will render to every person according to their deeds without any respect of persons.
Which introduces the concept of distributive justice.
Yes. To understand how radical this is, we need to define distributive justice clearly.
Go for it.
In human societies, true distributive justice means giving each person what they are due based on objective criteria, completely ignoring their wealth, their social class, or their family name.
Which, let's be honest, rarely actually happens in human courts.
Fair point. But in God's court, it is absolute. The commentary illustrates this by dividing the outcome into two distinct categories: favors and frowns.
Let us look at the favors first.
Glory, honor, and peace go to those who display a patient continuance in well-doing.
I noticed the author defines this patience very carefully.
He does.
It is not just about starting off strong. It is not about an initial burst of enthusiasm that fizzles out when things get difficult.
Right. It is not like the morning cloud or the early dew that burns off by 9 in the morning when the sun gets hot.
It has to have staying power.
Patient continuance means enduring difficulties, hardships, and oppositions over a lifetime. It is fixing on the right end, immortal glory and acceptance with God, and adhering to the right way, regardless of the friction it causes.
So it requires working good, not just knowing the theory of good or speaking eloquently about it on a podcast or something.
Exactly. Action, not just vocabulary.
Then we have the other side of the ledger, the frowns.
Indignation, wrath, tribulation, and anguish.
These fall upon the contentious. The author uses a phrase here that feels incredibly heavy. He says, every willful sin is a quarrel with God.
That is a stark way to frame it.
It is.
When you really look at the anatomy of a willful sin, it is not just a mistake or a lapse in judgment. It is an active quarrel with reality. It is striving with our Maker.
A theological fistfight.
Essentially, yes. The commentary notes that the Spirit strives with sinners to part them from their sin, but impenitent sinners strive against the Spirit. They hold fast to deceit. They refuse to obey the truth.
And the consequences.
Indignation and wrath are the causes, while tribulation and anguish are the necessary and unavoidable effects upon the soul.
The author provides some vivid illustrations for this contention, doesn't he?
He does. He says fighting against God is like setting briars and thorns before a consuming fire.
Think about that imagery. You are putting dry, brittle twigs in the path of a roaring inferno, thinking you can stop it or redirect it.
It is laughable, honestly.
Or, he says, it is like refusing a golden scepter only to be broken by an iron rod. The imagery leaves no room for misunderstanding the sheer futility of the rebellion. You cannot win a fistfight with a hurricane.
The futility is the whole point of the illustration. And this judgment is executed without respect of persons.
Meaning God doesn't care about your resume.
No, he does not evaluate individuals based on their external privileges, their social standing, or their barren knowledge of the truth. He evaluates based on their actual state and disposition.
Let me frame it for the listener like this. Imagine applying for a massive bank loan to start a business.
Okay, I am with you.
Usually an underwriter might look at your family connections, the prestigious university you attended, the influential people who wrote your letters of recommendation, or the neighborhood you grew up in.
All the soft variables.
Right. But in this specific bank, they strip away your name. They strip away your family connections. They strip away your religious affiliations and titles.
They do not care who your parents are?
Exactly. They look purely at your raw financial actions, your deposits, your withdrawals, your actual spending habits over the last 20 years. God's judgment operates with that level of stark, terrifying impartiality.
Taking that bank analogy a step further.
Yeah.
What happens if someone walks into the bank who never received the financial handbook?
Oh, that is a great question.
If God judges purely by actions and truth, and he strips away the religious resume, how does he judge those who never had access to a written rule book in the first place?
Right, because not everyone has the same starting point.
Exactly. How does a perfectly impartial judge evaluate the Gentiles who did not have the written law of Moses?
That is a massive theological question, and it is the exact causal transition the text addresses next.
It establishes 3 distinct degrees of light by which humanity is evaluated.
Right, the light of nature, the light of the law, and the light of the gospel. Let us break
Right.
these down, starting with the light of nature.
The light of nature applies to the outside Gentile world. The commentary points out a seeming contradiction in the text.
Which
It says they sinned without law, but also that they will perish. A rational person would ask, how can there be transgression where there is no law?
a fair legal objection.
Yes. The author clarifies that while they did not have the written ceremonial or moral law of Moses, they had something equivalent. They had natural notions of good and evil embedded in their humanity.
The author calls conscience the candle of the Lord. Even in the Gentile world, that candle was not quite put out. There is a baseline human understanding of morality.
It acts as an internal courtroom. By the force of natural dictates, they apprehended a vast difference between justice and equity versus murder and stealing.
So even without the 10 Commandments on stone tablets, they knew stealing was wrong.
Exactly. Conscience functions as a prosecuting attorney, a defense attorney, and a witness all rolled into one. The text says it is instead of 1,000 witnesses, testifying of the most secret things.
Their thoughts are constantly accusing or excusing one another.
The author even brings in some classical poetry to illustrate this, quoting the Roman poets, Horace and Juvenal, to prove that even the secular world understood the weight of conscience.
I found that fascinating that he used secular poets to prove a theological point.
Right. He quotes Horace describing a clear conscience as a brazen bulwark of defense, keeping one safe in conscious innocence.
Meaning a person with a clear conscience can sleep through a storm.
Yes. Then he quotes Juvenal describing a guilty conscience, saying no lash is heard, and yet the guilty heart is tortured with a self-inflicted smart.
A self-inflicted smart.
The mind has them astonished and beaten with a silent whip.
I have to challenge this setup, though.
Okay, what are you thinking?
Think about the psychological reality of what you just described. If conscience is equivalent to 1,000 witnesses testifying against our most secret hidden thoughts, delivering this self-inflicted smart 24 hours a day,
Right.
isn't the light of nature actually a terrifying disadvantage?
How so?
If you do not have the explicit written rules with a clear system of atonement, but you have an internal alarm system that never shuts off and constantly prosecutes you from the inside, that sounds like a psychological nightmare.
It is a heavy burden, and it is meant to be. The author's point is that it leaves the guilty without excuse.
Because they knew better on some internal level.
Right. God is justified in condemning them because they cannot plead total ignorance. They had a functional moral compass, and they deliberately walked in the opposite direction.
So ignorance is not an excuse.
But to answer your question, while the light of nature is a strict standard and a heavy burden, the next degree of light, the light of the law, is an even heavier burden because it brings greater clarity.
Oh, I see. The more light you have, the greater the accountability.
Exactly. The Jewish people possessed the light of the law. They sinned amid immense clarity. They had the rule book in their hands.
They literally had the prophets reading it to them.
They sinned in the midst of so much law, in the face of a pure and clear standard where the sanctions were cogent and enforcing.
Having the law was an incredible privilege, no doubt. It was a massive advantage in understanding God's character.
But the commentary insists it was not a saving privilege if they did not obey it.
Right.
The Jewish religious leaders of the day bolstered up their followers with an opinion that all Jews, no matter how badly they lived, would have a place in the world to come simply because of their heritage,
They relied on the possession of the book rather than the practice of the book.
which is a fatal error.
And then there is the third standard, the light of the gospel.
The highest standard of all. Final judgment will be administered by Jesus Christ. The text states that God shall judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ.
Hidden things will be brought to light.
What is done in corners will be proclaimed to the world. And those who enjoyed the gospel dispensation, who heard the clearest articulation of grace and truth, will be judged according to that highest standard.
That makes perfect sense. If the written law is a higher standard than the light of nature, we need to examine how the insiders completely mishandled that written law.
Oh, this is where it gets really uncomfortable.
Yeah, this moves us into a devastating critique of what happens when theology becomes purely academic. We are looking at the danger of the religious resume.
The religious resume, I love that term. The insider prided themselves on external privileges. The text lists them out meticulously.
Let's hear the list.
Being called a Jew, resting in the law, boasting of God, and being catechized from childhood. They love the title. They love the cultural cachet that came with being the chosen people.
The commentary notes, it is no new thing for the worst practices to be shrouded under the best names.
That is spot on.
The author talks about the concept of resting in the law, and he makes a brilliant diagnostic distinction here between two types of resting.
This is crucial for understanding self-deception.
Walk us through it.
The author states there is a healthy resting of complacency and acquiescence in the law, which is good. It means finding peace in God's commands.
Like saying, I trust what God said, and I am resting my soul on it.
Yes. But the insiders practiced a toxic resting. It was a rest of pride, slothfulness, and carnal security.
The lazy resting.
They thought having the law in their books, reading it aloud in their synagogues, and debating its nuances was enough to secure heaven, even if their private lives completely contradicted the text.
They boasted of God, which the commentary says can be the root of all true religion if done humbly. Acknowledging God's superiority is the beginning of wisdom.
But a proud, vainglorious boasting in the outward profession is the root of all hypocrisy.
Right. Spiritual pride is the most dangerous kind of pride because it uses the things of God to elevate the self.
And they were incredibly confident in their intellectual abilities. They believed they could discern things that differ.
What does that phrase mean in this context?
The commentary describes this as the ability to cleave the hair in doubtful cases.
Oh, like arguing over microscopic theological details.
Yes, they were accurate in the notion, highly skilled in theological debate, but loose and careless in the application. They viewed themselves as guides to the blind, lights in the darkness, instructors of the foolish.
They loved heaping titles of honor upon themselves.
But the tragedy is that they possessed a form of knowledge without any reality.
A form without reality.
The author compares it to a beautifully painted picture. The form has all the right colors, the outlines are accurate, the composition is visually striking, but it completely lacks life.
It is flat.
The brain is stuffed full of religious trivia, but the hands remain totally idle. It is an empty notion that makes no actual impression on the heart. It is the appearance of life covering spiritual rigor mortis.
Think about someone in our modern era who is obsessed with culinary arts.
Okay, another analogy, hit me.
So this person has memorized every single ingredient on a Michelin star restaurant's tasting menu. They know the exact temperature the sous vide machine needs to be set at for a perfect medium rare steak.
They know the science of cooking.
Right. They spend hours online critiquing other chefs, writing these long, arrogant reviews about flavor profiles, acid balance, and plating techniques.
I know people just like this.
But here is the catch. They have never actually cooked a single meal in their entire life.
Oh, wow.
They've never chopped an onion. They've never even tasted the food they are arguing about. They just own the cookbook and use it to feel superior to people eating fast food.
Yeah, it is brilliant. The Michelin star reviewer has the form of knowledge. They can cleave the hair in a debate about seasoning, but they have zero practical reality.
They would burn water.
They would starve in a kitchen full of raw ingredients. And when you have that massive gap between academic knowledge and actual practice, It cannot stay hidden forever.
The facade has to crack at some point.
It does. The internal hypocrisy inevitably bleeds out into the real world. It leads directly to the public scandals discussed in the next section.
Does it stay hidden, or does this hypocrisy inevitably cause a public implosion? The text asks a piercing question. Thou that teachest another, teachest thou not thyself?
It is a devastating rhetorical question.
The insider is guilty of the very sins they preach against. The specific charges laid out in the text are brutal: stealing, adultery, and sacrilege.
Let's look at how the commentary details what these charges actually look like in the historical context.
Yeah, break that down for us.
For stealing, the author points to the Pharisees devouring widows' houses, the worst kind of robbery, because it exploits the vulnerable under the guise of religious administration.
It is white-collar crime dressed in clerical robes.
Exactly. For adultery, he notes that many leading figures of that era were notorious for it, despite their public calls for purity.
Just massive, glaring hypocrisy.
But the third charge, sacrilege, carries a very specific historical weight that we need to unpack.
Sacrilege is the robbing in holy things, right? How does a religious insider rob God?
The author provides the historical context of the Babylonian exile. Before the captivity, the Jewish people constantly struggled with literal, physical idolatry.
They built golden calves, worshipped foreign deities, set up poles on high places.
Right. But the furnace of Babylon burned that dross away. After they returned from exile, you did not see them bowing to statues anymore. They were cured of overt idolatry.
So they fixed the problem.
Well, human nature is remarkably adaptable. They replaced overt idolatry with covert sacrilege.
Ah.
They began withholding tithes and offerings, converting what belonged to God to their own use and the service of their own lusts.
So they were skimming off the top of the temple treasures.
Essentially, yes. The commentary argues that this is almost equivalent to idolatry, but it is cloaked in the abhorrence of idols.
They traded a visible idol for an invisible one.
Right.
They condemned the guy bowing to a statue in the street while quietly stealing from the offering plate. It is a more sophisticated, more easily hidden form of rebellion.
Much more insidious.
But why is the worst outcome of an insider's sin the reaction of the outsider? The text asserts that the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of them. Why is that the ultimate tragedy in this scenario?
It comes down to the concept of representation. When you claim to bear the name of God, you are functioning as his ambassador to the outside world.
You were wearing the jersey.
Yes. The text argues that the greatest evil of a professor's sin is the dishonor done to God.
Because people judge the God by the followers.
The outsiders look at the hypocrisy, the stealing, the adultery, the sacrilege, and they draw logical, though incorrect, inferences about the religion itself.
They assume the religion countenances or allows such things.
Or at the very least, that the religion is powerless to change human behavior. God's character is wounded through the actions of his supposed followers.
The author writes a really sad line here. He says, "It is a lamentation that those who are made to be to God for a name and for a praise should be to him a shame and dishonor."
It breaks your heart to read it.
The outsiders are drawing the wrong conclusions about God, but the insiders are providing all the empirical evidence for those conclusions.
Right. The faults of the professors are not to be laid upon the profession itself. The truth remains the truth, regardless of who fails to live up to it.
Math is still math, even if I get the equation wrong.
Exactly. But the professors are the ones giving the occasion for the reproach. It is a severe caution to walk circumspectly. If you wear the uniform, everything you do reflects on the one who issued it.
If external religious actions, public professions, and detailed resumes can be so thoroughly corrupted and lead to such massive public scandal, how do you measure the real thing?
That is the big question.
If the uniform is compromised, what actually defines a true follower?
That requires a total shift from the external to the internal. The text concludes by outlining the inward reality.
Okay, let's look at that.
It tackles the most significant external marker for the Jewish people at that time: circumcision. The text states that circumcision, or any religious ritual, really only profits if one keeps the law.
The author is careful to clarify that the text is not condemning external institutions entirely, though, right?
Oh, no, not at all. He is not saying rituals are inherently bad.
Okay, good to clarify.
He says they are good in their proper place. God did not appoint them in vain. They have a purpose.
So what is the issue?
What is condemned is trusting in them and resting in them as sufficient for salvation. If a carnal professor relies on the ritual while their heart remains unchanged, the ritual becomes worse than useless.
It becomes a false security blanket.
Yes. Their circumcision becomes uncircumcision. They are branded as unclean out of the covenant because they sinned against greater light. They took the sign of the covenant while despising the substance of it.
They wanted the wedding ring without the marriage vows.
That is a perfect way to describe it. And then the author flips the entire paradigm.
How so?
He shows that if an outsider, an uncircumcised Gentile, obeys God without the external rituals, God accepts them. He uses the historical case of Cornelius from the book of Acts as the prime example.
Ah, Cornelius, the Roman centurion.
Yes, Cornelius was a Gentile, uncircumcised, a Roman soldier. But he was a devout man who feared God, gave alms, and prayed constantly, and he was accepted.
His obedience was a massive aggravation to the disobedience of the insiders who had the letter of the law.
It put them to shame. The outsiders who keep the righteousness of the law will stand in judgment over those who simply possess the letter and transgress it.
Which means external privileges, if they do not result in internal obedience, actively do us hurt. They increase our condemnation.
They do.
Which brings us to the core definition of true religion according to this chapter. True religion is inward, of the heart, and in the spirit. It is not outward in the flesh or the letter.
The focus is entirely on the audience of approval. Who are you performing for?
That is a convicting question.
It is. Outward religion seeks the praise of men. Men can only judge according to outward appearances. They see the fair pretenses, the plausible professions, the loud preaching against sin, the perfect attendance record.
But inward religion seeks the praise of God.
And God cannot be deceived by the painted picture. He pierces through the show to the reality of the affections and the will.
Think about buying a police uniform at a Halloween costume shop.
Oh boy, okay.
You can get the hat, the shiny badge, the radio, the dark blue shirt. You can put it on and walk down the street. And from a distance, people might treat you with a certain level of deference.
Because they see the colors in the badge.
Right. They judge by the plausible profession of the fabric. They see the uniform and make an assumption. But wearing that costume does not make you an officer of the law.
The external fabric means absolutely nothing without the internal reality. You have the appearance of authority, but none of the substance.
It means nothing without having gone through the academy, swearing the internal oath, carrying the actual authority of the state, and executing the daily, often unseen, dangerous duties of the job.
Because God is not checking to see if your costume is ironed perfectly.
No, he's not.
He's checking to see if you actually swore the oath and if you live it out when no one else is looking.
The costume without the oath is just impersonation.
In the spiritual realm, it is hypocrisy. And God, the righteous judge, sees straight through the polyester. He evaluates the hidden man of the heart.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today, pulling apart this illusion of the bribed judge.
It has been a heavy text, but a necessary one.
We started by looking at the psychological mechanisms of how religious insiders deceive themselves, using moral licensing to justify their own failures while loudly condemning others.
We analyzed how humans confuse God's patient forbearance with an endorsement of their hidden sins, turning divine patience into an excuse for rebellion.
Right. And we examine the terrifying equity of God's distributive justice, a justice that strips away our titles, our affiliations, and our theoretical knowledge, evaluating us purely on our actions and our truth.
We looked at the inescapable witness of the human conscience, that internal candle of the Lord that constantly accuses or excuses us, proving that no one is entirely without light or accountability.
We analyze the devastating gap between a form of knowledge and practical reality, showing how trusting in an external religious resume leads to hypocrisy, public scandal, and the dishonoring of God's name among those watching from the outside.
The text demands an internal reality that matches the external uniform. True religion operates in the spirit, seeking the praise of a God who sees in secret, rather than the applause of men who only see the surface.
No one is safe from accountability simply because they possess the right vocabulary or belong to the right demographic. The ledger will be balanced with absolute precision.
That is a sobering thought.
Which brings us back to that broken mirror we talked about at the beginning.
Ah, the mirror showing the person behind you.
Yes, we spend so much time looking at the reflection of the person standing behind us, magnifying their flaws to make ourselves feel secure. We use their failures as a shield against our own conscience.
But what happens when the mirror finally clears?
That is the question. What happens when the mirror clears and you are forced to look at your own face? I want to leave you with a closing question to ponder on your own. Imagine if every secret thought, every hidden motive, and every private action you engaged in this past week were instantly broadcast onto a giant screen for the whole world to evaluate. If that happened, would your outward religious resume match your internal reality? Or would your own conscience, that internal courtroom, function as your harshest prosecuting attorney? Thanks for joining us on Reformed Thinking.